As a group project, students from the Humanities Center at Monacan High School sat down with Mr. Joel Shaw to find out how a disability can affect someone's life. For example, what challenges does he go through on a daily basis? How is he accepted by the general public? As well as his thoughts on awareness and changes to policy that could help create a more accessible society.
I'm Anna.
I'm Madeline.
I'm Caroline.
I'm Ella.
My name is Joel. I am a software engineer and also a festival producer. I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. I currently reside in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been lucky enough to speak with several different groups about disability advocacy and other causes that are near and dear to my heart. I was born without hip sockets, and they also assumed that I had a form of muscular dystrophy, which is a large group of different diseases. But they were never able to fully identify one. So I'm currently in a spot where no one really knows, but there's a lot of, it kind of leans more towards the spinal muscular atrophy wheelhouse.
Would you say your disability is more visible or invisible? And either way, how has it affected your life?
Yeah, so my disability is definitely more visible. I use a wheelchair for everyday life. I think living with a visible disability honestly creates a lot more assumptions versus an invisible one. There's times and attitudes have changed a lot over the years. Not as much as you'd hope in a lot of cases. But there's still pockets of the population who assume, for myself or others with visible disabilities, that we just can't achieve certain tasks or need to rely on others more than we overwhelmingly actually do. But those assumptions, I think, don't always hit individuals with invisible disabilities as much because they appear quote unquote normal.
So, what struggles have you experienced trying to get accommodations?
Yeah, so one of the most common struggles that I've faced and honestly continue to face when it comes to getting accommodations is the overall assumptions that are made by society. I think at an individual level, honestly, most people are fairly accommodating, but once it comes to the corporate level, I think there are a lot of policies that make it a little more difficult to get proper accommodations. There's just a lot of assumptions going around in the world. For example, like getting train tickets rebooked, or even in some cases lower tables at restaurants. A lot of times it's a lot more difficult than you'd hope.
What was the moment you felt most accepted?
I've definitely been lucky, and I fully realize this isn't always the case, but I've always felt pretty lucky that I've been accepted pretty much in every aspect of my life, both past and present.
What was the moment you felt least accepted?
As I've gotten older and looked back at different chapters of my life, I've realized that a lot of it was kind of in my school days. I think I was a little less accepted during gym class and also recess throughout the years. There'd be a large number of times when my entire class, my friends, would be participating in different activities, and I'd just be hanging out on the sidelines because it wasn't an activity that I could actively participate in. And there were also a few instances on trips, field trips, various school trips, where it just wasn't feasible for me to join them due to one issue or another, such as just not being able to navigate where they're going, or even being able to get an accessible school bus to get to that location.
What relationship has been most impactful to you? Like a guardian of like a teacher or some kind of like figure like that, or just anyone that has been like impactful for you?
I would just say family and friends. Earlier I mentioned class trips not working out for one reason or another. But there was always a small group of friends who would stick it out with me. I honestly didn't realize it then, but they sacrificed a lot, and I think younger I didn't realize that. But I firmly believe that subconsciously, I think that's what shaped me into who I am today, and why I want to give back, whether it be talks or volunteering. And I don't think I'd feel nearly as accepted as I do today if it wasn't for them.
Was it easier for you to form relationships as an adult or as a child?
I'd say as an adult. I don't know if that is fully because of having a disability or if it's just the natural progression of life. I was definitely a lot more introverted as a child than I am today. So I'd say as an adult versus a child.
There's a lot of conversations about this everywhere, but do you view your disability as a separate part of you or as something that's like intertwined with your identity as a person?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely intertwined in myself. I have to consider various different aspects when navigating life that not everyone has to consider. So I think it definitely makes me who I am, and I honestly don't hate that.
Do you feel that people with different abilities and needs are often overlooked by society? And if so, how do you think we can improve this?
I do, yeah. I think the ADA has helped alleviate this a lot, but it's not always at the forefront of people's minds. I think a wider and more accessible education about disabilities, I think, would help. It would just create a greater visibility and understanding into the different forms of disabilities. I think that would help alleviate that a lot.
What would that education look like?
I think just the knowledge of kind of going back to the invisible disabilities, that on the surface, it may look like there are, I'm just throwing out numbers, there might be 10 different disabilities, but in reality, there are well over 1,000. So I think just the knowledge that both visible and invisible disabilities exist and some overarching ways to accept those, I think would be beneficial.
What are your thoughts and feelings on the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Yeah, so I think the ADA is a great act. It's a wonderful mission. It's relatively young in the grand scheme of life. I think there are a lot of one-case-fits-all mentalities wrapped into it. And I think there is very little influence from individuals with disabilities actually to create these policies.
So how has the ADA impacted you specifically, like positively or negatively?
Yeah, so overall, I'd say it has affected me extremely positively. Like I said, the ADA is relatively new, but looking back at just a few decades ago, and most things that I take advantage of now with little or no thought, getting up on curbs, entering businesses, parking in parking lots, in a lot of cases would be literally impossible if it weren't for the ADA. So for that, I'm very thankful. As far as things that I would say aren't the best with the ADA, and I think they should probably revise a little bit, is going back to invisible disabilities. The ADA, like I said, creates a lot of assumptions. I don't believe there is a vast realization of the scope of what is actually needed for an accessible society. So I believe there just needs to be more revisions and more consultations with individuals who potentially benefit by the ADA.
So about your impact outreach program, how has this impacted you? How has it impacted others as well?
Yeah, so I kind of backstory on Diftober. I founded it and currently serve as executive producer. It consists of several bands each year and has a charitable donation aspect as well. And I'd say it affects me in massive ways that I honestly didn't think were possible when the event was conceived. When I came up with the idea in 2018, I just wanted a space where I could gather all of my friends. We could have a great time and have a meaningful difference as well. We had our first event in 2019, and I think on a personal level, it made me realize that I can actually accomplish something at that level. It's not fully related to disability, but I've been introverted for most of my life. I think possibly because of my disability, whether or not I realized that or not. So I think finally being able to put myself out there and realize it's possible has been very beneficial in my outlook. And I would hope that other people looking into that event kind of feel the same way, and kind of give them the encouragement to break down those barriers, and hopefully it crushes some assumptions that people have about having disabilities or living with a disability.
How have your talks with different able people impacted you or others?
Yeah, so I've been extremely lucky to give talks to several different groups of people. I'd say for myself, the impact is just the joy of seeing people in the audience of all different backgrounds who may have arrived with one or several preconceived notions about disabilities, being able to leave the room and have a completely different outlook on what it means to have a disability, or in some cases, what disabilities are. I honestly would hope that they would leave with the same thought. I hope they continue to leverage what they potentially learned in those talks, and realize that people with disabilities, both visible and invisible, are just as capable, if not more capable, as our able-bodied peers.
What has been your most valuable experience in volunteering?
Yeah, I'd say the most valuable experience I've had is getting the privilege to meet individuals from a wide variety of backgrounds and getting to learn their backstories, whether or not they have a disability or not.